Before we begin, feel where your body is touching something. The chair, the floor, the fabric you're wearing, the ground beneath your life. You don't have to agree with me. You don't need to improve anything. Just let your body listen. This is not advice. This is a transmission. Take what lands, leave the rest. I want to tell you about a night in Casablanca. Yes, Casablanca, like the movie. Also a city in Morocco.
Economic.
Capital city of Morocco, West Africa. 2013. I was living the dream everyone told me I want. And I think to some degree, I also wanted it. A part of me definitely wanted this life, this dream. Expat life. Parties at beach houses, receptions at embassies, champagne and oysters on rooftops, gallery openings. I was desired, admired, successful. And I've never felt more alone in my entire life. Sylvester party, December 31st. At Yellow Gate. Hundreds of people I didn't know. The way there, interesting. I was invited to a Christmas Eve dinner, which was lovely. And then a few days after, bumped into the host at lunch, and he told me about this New Year's party where I should absolutely come. It was the party, and gave me the number of the host and said to call him. And I tried calling this person. It was really hard to get hold of. And then the host told me to bring cash to this address. And I think it was December 30th. So to take a cab. It's the way to get around Casablanca. Small taxis, petit taxi. On this main road. And just stop the taxi for a moment, jump out. This man comes out, takes my money and leaves. That was my way into the party. So I show up December 31st, feeling radiant and alive and stunningly beautiful and successful. And I've only arrived 6 weeks prior to that in Casablanca in this diplomat life. I could be anyone. I was radiant in my newness. Nobody knew me yet. I was feeling wild and free and alive, and I was dancing, and the champagne was flowing, the buffet was perfect, the music was perfect. I love techno. They had great techno DJs. I was kissing strangers. Everybody wanted me. All the attention on me. I was so desired. I was the center of the attention, the center of the party. And compliments, it felt like glass. Laughter that never reached my chest, my heart. My jaw was hurting from performing. And dancing with people who only saw my performance, but not my soul. It was a beautiful long night, nevertheless. That's what I did in my 20s. I partied hard. I stayed up until sunrise, way after that. And the end of this New Year's party, standing in the morning sun on this main road, waiting for a taxi, surrounded by people, feeling utterly, completely alone. The host asked me to stay. I stayed. We ate oysters and drank champagne for breakfast. We kissed, we made out, connected. I still felt nothing. Maybe a headache from the long night. It was the beginning of a relationship. And what I didn't know was I was confusing admiration for intimacy. This man admired me. I was, again, beautiful, the new girl on the block, exotic. And he wanted me. He admired me. He admired my radiance, my aliveness, and being wanted is not the same as being known. Being impressive is not the same as being seen. Being wanted is not the same as being known. And being impressive is not the same as being seen. I was so impressive. Had my JD, experience in phenomenal, brilliant law firms, prestigious firms, and now I was following my career, following my heart, doing a really cool thing, going into diplomacy, working in Morocco, and I was performing aliveness so well, even I believed it. I totally bought my own story. I was so convinced. I'm having a great time. Watch me. Even I believed it. I was performing aliveness so well, even I believed it. And that happened again and again. It happened probably earlier on, even through my childhood, teenage years already, but really tangible now, like really that pattern of performing at fundraiser galas in Vienna, at balls, at diplomatic receptions, at beach parties, at raves, at conferences, especially as a woman and before diplomacy, working in corporate law, mergers and acquisitions. I was so often the only woman in the room, the only female person in the room. And in that, I was the most successful person in the room, the only woman. And I also always was the least seen, and never felt seen. Even though I was so admired, right? Like people walked up to me in all kinds of contexts in the street, at meet and greets, at networking events. They walked up to me and they were curious about my story, and I answered their questions. I told them the story, but I was hiding. Yeah, I was not there. And I was so admired. And the truth about admiration is distance dressed up as desire. People admire status, not humans. They admired my journey, my good grades, my expertise, my excellency, my looks, my beauty, my brains, my impressive CV. They admire status, not humans. When you become the impressive one, you become unreachable. Impressive, unreachable. They see your resume, your publications, your speaking gigs, not your heartbeat. Why power isolates. When you've mastered everything externally, we talked about that. You've got all the things. You're successful on paper. When you've mastered everything externally, people assume you got it together. You don't need anything. They show up with their problems. They bring you their problems because you seem so sovereign. You seem so collected, so put together. And they never ask about yours. They never ask how you're feeling, how you're doing. You're always the holder. You're never being held. So this loneliness of command. Who holds the holder? Who asks the leader how they're doing, how they're really doing? I actually just yesterday had a conversation with a friend about that, who is leading a team. She manages a team in a high performance, high stakes environment, and she's telling everybody else what a great job they're doing, and nobody tells her that she's doing a great job. How is she really doing? So who sees past the performance? Keeping it together, keeping it together. The difference of being studied versus being seen. Yeah, I remember it's such a bizarre feeling when you're in a room, when you're in a space, and people study you like an animal in a wildlife park. Yeah, it's almost as if they're taking mental notes of how you hold your glass, how you speak, how you move your body, with whom you speak for how long. You're being studied. Nobody sees you. You're being studied. There's always pressure. The difference of being consulted versus being met. Oh, I was wondering, I was so curious about your opinion. I do that too. It's great. Yeah, it's so amazing to get information and perspective from peers. But there's a huge difference between being met as peers, expert to expert, or being consulted, like wisdom being extracted from you. The difference of being desired versus being known. Loneliness doesn't come from being alone. I love being alone. I'm an introvert. I do so well on my own. I could spend weeks on my own, probably. Loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from not being met. And a huge part in that is, how much do I allow myself to be seen? How safe do I feel to actually be seen? How safe do I feel being seen in my power, in my full expression, also in my tears, in my anger, in my emotions, especially as a male being, as a man? How do I let myself be seen when I'm sad, when I'm actually touched, when I'm moved, when I laugh? Again, back in that law firm, never heard anybody laugh. No laughter allowed. Bringing in a piece of societal wisdom, the performance trap. Here's what happens when you become more powerful. People stop seeing you as human. You become a function, a resource, a solution to their problems. They want your strategy, your connections, your money, your status, your advice. They don't want you as a human. You become a resource, a solution to their problems. They don't want your confusion, vulnerability, need, uncertainty, curiosity, humanness. So you learn how to show up only polished, always strong, always certain, always impressive, always put together. And the more impressive you become, the lonelier you get. The bigger the gap gets, right? Between who you really are, with all the confusion, vulnerability, need, uncertainty, because you're human, and how you're perceived. So the gap between the impression you're making and who you really are gets bigger and bigger. You get lonelier and lonelier. Nobody's asking, how are you really? How are you really? They're asking, what do you think about this deal? How is your business going? What are the numbers? This is the trap of success without intimacy. You can have the house, the portfolio, the recognition, the admiration, and still go home to an empty bed. And it doesn't even matter if there's a person in the bed, it just feels empty. Not because you're alone, but because even when someone's there, you're not being met. You're not letting yourself be met. The truth. True intimacy requires you to drop the performance, to be uncertain, to not have all the answers, to let yourself be seen when you're not impressive. Wild concept. Something you don't know, where you're uncertain, where you maybe fall apart, where it hurts. And for men who spent decades being the strong one, also this like huge societal pressure, right? You gotta hold it together. You need to provide for the family. You need to You need to be strong. Don't show any feelings. Besides maybe in sports. So for men who've spent decades being the strong one, that feels like death. Being unimpressive, being uncertain, dropping the performance, death. But it's not death. It's one death, a death. One you'll survive. It's the doorway to actually being alive. Scary. I know, I've done it too. Still an ongoing journey where there are moments where I'm terrified of showing what's really there, what's really underneath. The impression, the impressive resume, the impressive travels, the impressive But those moments of dying, they've always been worth it to me, always. On the other end, once I died, I resurrect as a whole different being. More connection, more aliveness. And I want that for you too. Where do you feel most seen and least known? I felt seen in boardrooms, at receptions, being glamorous, at parties. People saw my performance. They saw my excellence, my expertise, the wildness too, the competence, the fearlessness. So I felt seen to some degree. Least known? With my beloved. or only felt safe enough to give the performance, who maybe only wanted the performance. And I remember lying in bed next to people, staring at the ceiling, both of us, thinking they have no idea who I am. And I don't know if I want them to. Who actually asks you how you're doing, not what you think about the deal. My friend V in Casablanca, she was the only one. Everyone else wanted my opinion, my strategy, my connections, but V, she looked at me. She'd look at me and say, Flora? No, she would say, Flora, comment vas-tu vraiment? How are you really doing? And I'd start crying because nobody else ever asked. What would it cost to let someone see you when you're not impressive? Everything. It would cost me everything. Because if they saw me when I was not performing, they might leave. And then I didn't know the truth. And then I'd know the truth. That I was only lovable when I was impressive. Right? I was only lovable when I was impressive, otherwise they would leave. That's the terror. Not that they'll see me. That they'll see me and walk away. I'm going to ask you some questions. You don't need to answer. Just let them land. Where do you feel unseen but competent? Who do you actually relax around? Who sees you, not your achievements? Who sees you, not your achievements? What would it cost to tell the truth there? To let yourself be answered? To need something? What would it cost? Where does your body hold the loneliness? Just breathe. Just notice. And maybe you don't know yet. Maybe you had to stop watching this because it's too much. You can come back at any time. Just noticing, just breathing. And that might be a lot to ask. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for contact. If you feel this in your body, the weekly letter from me to you, from me, Flora Petri, to you, is below. This is where I share first about my exclusive private programs and what wants to move through me. Like, comment, share with someone who think you would benefit from this. Find me when you're ready.